Okay, we're going to call to order our first hearing of the evening. This is the application of Patrick Schroll, and this must be Mrs. Schroll. What's your name?
Elizabeth.
Okay, and Elizabeth Schroll. The applicants are proposing to build a shed dormer that's 17 feet by 34 feet to the rear of their existing residence at a distance 5.8 feet from the right property sideline. The property is located at 17 Crane Road in Milton, Massachusetts, a Residence C zoning district. The residence was built in approximately 1938 as a single-family dwelling, and therefore it's pre-existing and non-conforming. And the existing structure, the plans for the existing structure shows that it was built at a distance, according to Mr. Prondak, of 5 feet 7 inches from the right sideline when 10 feet is required. So here the applicants are seeking a special permit from the Board of Appeals that the proposed change to this pre-existing non-conforming structure is not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. And Mrs. McGettrick, who's here, will tell you that you've formulated this the right way, not just asking for a finding, but asking for a special permit as well as part of that, so you kind of tie it right in. My name's John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me to my immediate right is board member Virginia Donahue King, and to my immediate left is board member Jeffrey Mullen. The rules of the board: first we'll hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from people who have questions of you, if any, and then we'll hear from any person present who wishes to speak in opposition to your application for variance. In addition to the advertisement, which I've just summarized, we have the April 4th, 2019 application, which we'll have entered into evidence. We have a denial letter, which Mr. Prondak was required to send because you need the relief, dated March 28th, 2018. And we have a series of plans for your residence by Greystone Interiors in Haddonfield, New Jersey, of all places. We won't go
Actually,
there.
knows someone who lives in Haddonfield, New Jersey. Yep.
And they show the first floor plan, the second floor plan, and various other, maybe multiple copies of first floor bathroom, second floor elevation again, and we have a plot plan. It looks like it's an engineering plot plan, but maybe in the original documents there's a stamp that's by a registered professional engineer, but it shows the subject property and its dimensional deficits. And this is the next case. We have a photograph here. Are these your photographs?
Yes.
Okay, great. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 6 photographs of the subject property. We should just tell you that the hearing is being, while it's being televised, it's also being tape recorded by Mrs. Sutton, which is the official record, so that would ask that before anyone speaks, tell us your name and address, so we'll be able to decipher the tape if we have to go to it. Beyond that, I think we're ready to go. So I say to you, welcome to the Board of Appeals. A challenging assignment, and delighted to hear from you.
Thanks. I think the only thing that you are missing in that is the letter of support from our neighbors.
Oh, good, and you have that.
Yes, I believe Beverly has that.
Oh, okay, well, I didn't work from that. Let me just, we do have a letter of support from the neighbors. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but they express their support. They say it will allow the Schroll family to stay in the town for many years to come. Well, we hope that happens too. They don't think the dormer will alter the appearance or character of the neighborhood. In fact, it will be a welcome change. So they're pleased to see your family building even stronger roots in the Milton community. And it's signed by the neighbors of Crane Road and St. Mary's Road. These are always difficult to pronounce, at least for me. It looks like Sophie and Scott Bamback,
And Brick.
Breck?
Brick.
Okay, great. Matt and Katie Deeb? Okay. I'm going to say Ernie, but I could be wrong there.
It's Aaron and Philippe.
Aaron and Philippe
General.
Genero, and Lisa and Bill McDonough.
Yes.
So we thank the interested neighbors for sending that in. Why don't you proceed with your
Sure.
application?
Thank you. So we have been living in Milton for just about 3 years. It'll actually be 3 years on Monday since we purchased the home. And like you said, the house was built in around 1938. It's the best approximation that we have. Right now, it's just under 1,100 square feet. We have on the first floor, as you can see from the photos, it is a cape home, but the second floor is completely unfinished. So right now, we're living in a one-bedroom, one-bathroom home.
Like one of these mini homes, is it?
Yeah,
What
kind
are
of
they-
is.
What are they called, micro homes or tiny houses?
Yeah, it's a tiny house. We hope to not live in a tiny house any longer, but right
I
now,
didn't think they existed in Milton, but I guess they do.
well, we'll bring something interesting to you.
Hopefully not much longer.
Yes, yes. So our plan, like you said, is to build a shed dormer across the rear of the property, which will give us about another 1,000 square feet to finish. So we are hoping to put 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms on the second floor. And the reason that we really need to put the shed dormer is because my husband Patrick here is 6'5". He's a very tall man.
I hadn't noticed. We thought he was from the Patriots or something when I saw him
wish.
walk in. You wish?
He's an
Well, I
Eagles
don't
fan,
know.
though.
Then he'd be getting beaten up and hit in the head. You wouldn't like that.
But, that really limits the space that he's able to use on the second floor. So it just wouldn't work for our family. And we recently got married in September, and we'd like to start a family.
Congratulations, that's wonderful.
Thank you. We'd like to start a family and stay in Milton, and we just feel like this is really the best use of our money, and we don't want to leave the community, and we love our home. We've met great neighbors. You can see the neighbors that have supported, they're all abutters to our home, and they strongly, are in favor of us doing this, only to, kind of clean up the house, bring it into the century a little bit more, and just, like we said, put down roots, raise a family there. And this is really the house, I keep telling him we're never moving again, so.
That's been said before, hasn't it?
Yeah, so we've moved enough times in the past few years, so this is really where we've called home and felt like it's home.
Okay, so
for
all
us.
of the improvements are interior?
Yeah, we will be doing a little bit on the outside. I mean, we've already done a lot of landscaping work on the outside. We put up a new fence on the outside, but we're replacing the siding with something a little bit more original to the character, with some vinyl, some cedar siding that was original to the house.
And what color is the cedar siding going to be? Is
So
it
it's-
original? Are you going to keep the cedar, or are you going to paint it?
We can't keep the original cedar, unfortunately, it's not in good shape. We've taken some of the aluminum off. It's kind of like a blue-gray color, and that's actually the color that we picked, that we wanted to put up anyway. So
Oh, okay.
kind of a
good.
shame we can't keep the original, but it's just unfortunately not in good shape.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And I take it that you're going to build, if you get your special permit, you're going to build the proposed addition in substantial compliance with the plans that you filed?
Yes, exactly, yep, yeah, we had
You know,
those.
if you're going to tweak it a little bit, you jog down to Mr. Prondak's office
Sure.
and discuss it with him.
Yes, and we've already met with him too regarding our project. Before we started, we really wanted to get an understanding of what the special permit would allow us to do, what, kind of the rules and regulations of the town and what we needed to abide by. So we met with him and probably for about 45 minutes one afternoon and just
Okay, and
talked through
was
everything.
that helpful?
Yes, it was very helpful, yeah.
That's great to hear. Well, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I mean, really, we just feel like it's something that won't really change the appearance of the house too much from, looking straight on Crane Road. You won't notice any difference on the sides. You'll notice a little bit more of a roof line, but we're not going above the existing roof line that's there or out over the existing foundation that already exists. So that's really, we want to stay consistent with the neighborhood. There are a few other shed dormers within our, on St. Mary's Road, which kind of loops around Crane in an L shape. So we're visible from our home. So we know that we're not, drastically changing the characteristics of the neighborhood.
Okay, great. Let me see if my colleagues have any questions.
Sure.
Mr. Jeffrey Mullen, please.
So, did you review those abutters, how those abutters lay out with respect to the premises?
No, I didn't, but perhaps you can tell us. You have
Sure.
your abutters list there.
I believe it's actually on the plot plan, the abutters, but the, Bill and Lisa McDonough are to our right. They are the ones that were
Immediately to the right?
They're immediately to the right if you're facing the front of the home. They're the ones that we need the variance for since they're about 5 feet away from us. They did offer to come to this meeting tonight to speak in support, but they have 2 young children, so we didn't want to take their time to come down here, so we had them sign the letter instead.
Okay, that's great.
Aaron and Philippe Generou are directly behind us. Next to them
What street are they on?
they're on St. Mary's. Next to them is Sophie and Scott Brambrick. Then there's one abutter to our left on Crane Road, but that house has been vacant for about 2 years now. The man that lived there passed away, and the house has not gone up for sale, so it's vacant. No one to get a signature from, unfortunately.
The improvements that you're proposing, you including modifying the first floor?
Yes, we are.
What's going on with that?
We have started that project already. We
You
are.
have a separate building permit for
Yes,
that?
we do, yep. So we started that about 2 weeks ago. We are expanding the kitchen and the dining room, and it once was an enclosed sun porch into one larger room to give us some more space. Our kitchen was very small and, you know, kind of right out of the 1960s, to be honest with you. It was pretty funny walking in there. We had an ironing board in the wall and very old stove. But, you know, there are some original details that we do plan to keep there. So that's really the bulk of the renovations on the first floor. We did propose doing something to our bathroom, but we decided not to do that.
Will you be able to see the shed dormer from the street?
Not from Crane Road.
Would you say that when the dormer is in place, it is substantially similar to your neighboring properties?
Yes, I mean, the houses that are, to our right and behind us and on the left, they're all colonials, but there are 2 other capes on St. Mary's on the other side of the street.
Is
The Deebs, yes, they have a cape with a dormer on the back as well.
there a driveway on the left?
Yes.
And can you access the shed in the back through the driveway? No.
The shed dormer?
No, there's a shed.
Oh,
in
yes, yeah, you have to go through the fence.
Yeah, okay. I forgot, I had one more question. If I think of it, I'll ask it again.
Do you
Yeah,
want me
thank
to reserve additional time for you, Mr.?
Not really, but if you want to do that, that would be nice. yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
we'll reserve a minute for your, maybe you can think of your question.
Thanks, John.
My
Mrs.
question's
Kane.
been answered.
Okay, well, I have to stall a little bit, I think. I thought that you did a wonderful job explaining
Thank you.
all of this, and it's very helpful. What I was really going to ask you, and it doesn't have a lot to do with your application, are you living in the house while
Yes.
the renovations are taking place?
Yes, we are.
So this is quite an adventure.
It is, yeah.
Back from vacation last weekend.
Came home to this.
Okay, well,
It's tough.
and in terms of the dormer, which is you don't need any relief for the first floor changes. With respect to this dormer, how long do you think the construction period is going to take to get that put on?
I think with the whole project, it was gonna be about 6 to 8 weeks. So the dormer itself shouldn't be long, and that was with the first floor and
Oh,
the
okay,
second floor.
all right,
So I think it's more like 4 to 6 with separate projects now.
all right. And I assume you're not doing this work yourself?
Oh, gosh, no. He's an accountant, so.
You're an accountant, so
She doesn't have power tools.
No.
just answer one more question. You're not an accountant for the Internal Revenue Service? Okay, then I feel better. Mr. Mullen,
So there's a variance in the back already for the back porch. Is that a 3-season building? And is that the same as it was installed in 57?
Yes,
It was, yeah.
So that was an addition to the
Yes.
original home?
Yes.
and that's what's part of the first floor work is enclosing that.
You're enclosing that, make it part of the house?
Yes.
Okay. I don't have any further questions.
okay, well, I don't
Thank
have any further questions. Let's, thank you for your presentation. Is there anybody present this evening who has any questions of the Schrolls or wishes to otherwise speak in favor of this application for special permit and a finding? And there's no such person present. Let me ask the more formidable question. Is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition to this application for special permit and finding. And there's no such person present, so that's good. So unless you have something further to add, and you don't,
Nope.
okay, it's best to quit when you're ahead. Then what we're going to do is end the evidence portion of this hearing and discuss the application in open session and vote on it
Sure.
as we're required to do by law. Mrs. King?
Sure. It's well presented. Thank you for that. Nice and clear. This is the only way to add on to your house is to get a variance. And a one-bedroom house in town is very unusual. So I imagine the new construction will make your house fit in even better. And it's not going any further beyond the current constraints of the house, is just continuing along the same. So I'm in favor of this application.
Okay, Mr. Jeffrey Mullen.
I'm going to support the finding from the Board of Appeals that the proposed change is not more detrimental to the neighborhood that currently exists, and therefore support the special permit application. My sense is that we're going to do a lot of these. This is
I think that's true.
because of the SJC decision, right?
Yes, and
Yeah.
then when you write this decision, I'll use your form as an exemplar for all of the other ones that come before.
Is that because
us.
I asked that other question?
No, because you write so beautifully and with clarity.
I'm going to vote to support the special permit.
Yes,
Now it's your turn to talk.
yes, it is. I thought you made a wonderful presentation. You were well prepared. You set forth important circumstances why this should be granted. There's always, and you did your homework, going out, talking to the neighbors and getting their consents. The improvements that you're suggesting here are needed, and they're needed now, particularly if you're thinking of having a family here. To me, they're tasteful, they're in keeping with the neighborhood, they're in keeping with this particular house. So one of the things that you mentioned, which is something that I think the board always likes to consider, is that we always, when we can, we always love to grant relief, keeping young families in the town and not driving them off to Abington or South Weymouth or whatever, because it's the lifeblood of this town. There are a lot of old people in this town. And having young families there and in our schools, and it adds a vibrancy to the community, even though most of those people like the folk singers out here on Wednesday nights. So I thought you did great, and I'm going to vote in favor of your application. So we're going to put it to a vote, and then I'll tell you a couple of conditions that we always put in here.
Sure.
So all those in favor of granting the special permit and the finding that this will not be substantially more detrimental, please say aye.
Aye.
So congratulations, you
Thank
get your
you.
finding. What I didn't ask you in the evidentiary hearing is, in terms of doing the work that is called for under the special permit, when do you intend to do that?
Yeah. We'd like to make a seamless transition from the work on the first floor up to the second floor with our
Okay.
contractor.
Okay, well, what we have to do here is we have to write a decision.
Sure.
And it's going to take us a couple of weeks to get the decision out. Maybe if luck strikes, we can do it a little faster. It has to be filed with the town clerk, and then there's a 20-day appeal period, you know that? Even though there's been no objections.
Yes.
Somebody technically could object before you can secure your building permit.
Yes.
With respect to prep work, you do that at your own risk, interior prep work. And if you have any questions, what you should be doing and not, deal directly with Mr. Prondak.
Sure.
He's terrific. in
Yes,
that,
yes,
and
we-
we'll make sure you stay on the straight and narrow, and make sure, importantly, that any, I'll call them substantial changes, but I mean any material changes
Sure.
that you intend to make sure you discuss those with Mr. Prondak, and they're within the scope of our decision.
Sure.
Otherwise, you'll have a special permit which won't get you where you want to be.
Fair
Okay?
enough.
So with all of that, thanks for coming tonight, congratulations.
Thank you very
and,
much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Want to give me that? Thanks.
Wait a minute.
It does mean I have it. Write it down. Do we know it? I don't see it. Oh. You wrote it down. Pink pen? There's a lot of them. There are a lot of them, too many to remember is what I would say. Hey, how are you? Good. John.
Awful.
Well, the top was on, nothing spilled, that's good.
Jittery. He's one of those old people in town.
I'm up next, right?
You're up next,
Okay, great.
you Mr. is it Gallup?
Yes.
Okay, great, yeah, you're up next.
Wonderful.
Just give me 2 seconds
Yeah,
here.
sure.
And, oh, okay, great. Okay, you all set, Jenny? All set, sir?
Yes,
Okay,
John.
we're going to call to order our second hearing of the evening. This is the 7:45 hearing, and it's the application of the Gallup Family Revocable Trust. The application is dated April 8th, 2019, and the applicant is proposing to build a 2.5-story addition to the rear of his existing residence at 78 Center Lane at a distance of 8 feet from the right side property line. The property's in a Residence C district. This home was built in 1951 and is a single-family dwelling, and it's considered dimensionally non-conforming. The plot plan shows that the existing structure was built 8 feet from the right side property line when 10 feet was required under Section 6C1 of the bylaw. Here, the applicant is seeking a special permit from Section 4 of the bylaw on the grounds that his improvement is not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. I think I can shorten this up a little bit, just for this, but my name's John Leonard, Virginia King, Jeff Mullen. The rules of the board are going to be the same as the last hearing. Were you present there, so I don't have to review all of that. We're going to have as evidence the advertisement. We have the application. We have Mr. Prondak's February 19th, 2019 denial letter. We have a plot plan of land by Michael Paul Antonino, dated January 28th, 2019, showing the subject property and its dimensional requirements. We have some plans from JSG.
Joe Genduso.
Yeah, Joe, that's right, I thought that was him. He didn't represent, but he did work on another hearing we had last
Okay.
week, so he's familiar to us. So it shows the house on its various looks, various sides, and another addition and alteration plan for the proposed interior addition. So we'll have that as evidence at the hearing. We have a list of abutters that Mr. Gallup has provided us with. Thank you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 abutters. Rather than reading names and addresses, I'll just say Jennifer Bailey has assented. Joanne Cullinane. Leonard Wall, Michelle Wall, and Catherine, looks like Cronin. So we thank all of you abutters, and thank you for doing that. So, Mr. Gallup, why don't you tell us about your application and why the board should grant you the relief you're requesting?
So thank you for hearing our application. I'm here on behalf of my wife and I. My wife is at home doing bedtime. We have 3 small children, which is a large part of the reason that we're looking to do this addition. We have 1 full bathroom upstairs. It's currently a 4-bedroom. There's a bedroom over the garage. One of the bedrooms is very small. You have to walk through to get to the other bedroom. So, and then we have a half bathroom downstairs in our kitchen, essentially. So looking to rework the footprint a little bit to make it a little bit more family friendly as our kids grow older. Want to have
How old are your kids?
6, 3, and 1. So we want to have a second bathroom upstairs and a little bit better layout downstairs, a little bit more room for our family to grow. So the plans, as you'll see, is basically an addition right off of the back of the house, which will have then a master bedroom and bathroom above that. It's the reason we need the variance, as you mentioned, reading that, is the existing property was built with the garage only 8 feet from the property line, while the requirements are 10. I don't know at the time if, I don't know if the bylaw came into effect after that or if they just didn't conform at the time. Not really sure on the history, but the fact of the matter is currently it's only 8 feet from the property line. Our proposed plans are extending that directly back, so we would be basically continuing that 8-foot setback on the right side, hence the need for the variance. We're proposing to do that basically to make it a better aesthetic look when you look at the side of the house, rather than having indentations and things like that to get to the 10 feet, and to basically make the best use of the land. As you know, that lot sizes aren't huge in that, and well, a lot of Milton, particularly in our neighborhood. So we were.
And what is the size of this lot, approximately?
I don't actually know the square footage, but it's.
4,000, 5,000,
Ye-
something?
I think
a
it
little
might
more
be
than
included in there.
It may be.
Yeah.
Apologies. I think it should be on the. I don't have that in front of me.
The plot plan.
Land survey.
Ah, sure it is.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
no,
we see the-
7,500 square feet.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's not so small.
Yeah, so we just want to basically make the best use, as I said, of the space that we have and be able to maintain a bit of a yard for the kids to play, swing set and all that, right? So that is basically the nature of our proposal here, and hoping to have your support.
Okay, you've given us the name of 5 neighbors, all of whom support you.
Yeah, that was, I've spoken to quite a few, many of whom support. That was a bus stop list gathered today, so I could certainly, I probably should have gotten some more of those, but at least gives a representation of many of the folks we spoke to in the neighborhood.
Okay, did any of the people with whom you spoke object to your?
Everybody that I spoke to was either supportive or at least not expressing an objection. I noticed some neighbors here, so I will obviously get to that part when everybody's free to speak, but
Okay, most of them look smiling, so they may be-
Okay.
they may be supportive of your
Maybe.
application.
Hopefully.
We'll find
we
out.
will see.
Okay,
And it's, I'm sorry, I guess just one other point is that all of the houses in the neighborhood, or the majority of them, are similar colonials, and quite a few have had a similar sort of addition off the back. It's pretty consistent. Joe Genduso himself has probably done a handful of them in the neighborhood, so it's pretty consistent, I believe, anyway, with the look of other additions in the neighborhood, and I don't think presents anything that's, very, very different or much more, difficult to look at or anything like that.
sure, it's consistent,
Yes.
and it's in fact an upgrade to the neighborhood.
Yes, yeah.
You're going to improve the property values of your nearby.
That's
houses.
that's
We
our
hope.
goal. Give back a little bit to the neighborhood, right?
That really happens. It
Yeah,
really-
absolutely. Sure.
Okay, that's great. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it.
Let me see if my
Short and
colleagues
sweet.
have any questions. Do you want to start?
I know you
Mr.
went
Moore?
through this, but could you just summarize again what's happening with this addition? What's going on the first floor?
It will be basically off the back of the existing garage, there's gonna be a family room, laundry room, and we're gonna relocate the bathroom on that right side over there. And the existing kitchen will be bumped out a little bit. And there's a family room as well, right off the back of the garage there.
Yep.
And the kitchen will be bumped out a bit as well and open to that new family room.
And what about on the second floor?
The second floor will basically be taking an existing very small bedroom and making that part of the master bathroom, and then the master bedroom will be extended above the new family room that's being added.
Which is over the garage.
It's over the new family room is behind the garage on the first floor. The master bedroom will be over the new family room in the back.
What's going on over the garage?
There's an existing bedroom there that basically won't be changed.
The dormer's not being changed? The dormer
Oh,
looks
there
like-
is, in Joe Genduso's drawing, there is a proposed dormer there. I think we're gonna forego that. That was an add-on suggestion that he had, but won't be in the final permit plans.
With respect to the improvements, they're substantially similar to what's shown in this elevation, except for that dormer?
That's correct. Yep, we're scratching the dormer. So from the front of the house, there's nothing changing
Right.
on the front elevation.
And how big is the current house?
It's, I wanna say, it's under 2,000 square
And how
feet.
big is it gonna be?
I apologize, I don't have the numbers on the top of my head. It's probably an additional 500, maybe?
It's all of that.
Yeah.
It's definitely all of that. Is there anything above the second floor?
No. The 2.5, I believe, is because there's a slight grade in the backyard, so the crawl space it'll be raised a little bit, but we're not going up 2.5 floors.
Does the house have a walk-up attic?
It does.
And what is that, like, can you stand up in there?
No. Well, I can't. I'm tall. And it's probably 6 feet in the center.
And will there be a basement be underneath the extension?
No, just a crawl space. We have crazy water issues, groundwater issues in our neighborhood, so we don't want to mess with that.
Okay, I don't have any questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Mrs. King?
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Were you
that's
going to say something?
No, I'm just saying thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm fine.
Okay,
I
and
know the neighborhood well.
No, great.
I have no further questions. Let's see if any people present
Okay,
want to be
sure.
heard. Is there anyone present this evening that who either has questions of Mr. Gallup or otherwise wishes to speak in support of this application? Did I say a hand?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm the abutter on, my name's Mary
Okay,
Saban.
no, time out. Because of television issues, you've got to come up here, and we're going to give you a microphone. I'm not doing that to embarrass you,
I'm
but
not embarrassed.
sometimes they can't pick up your questions, and then the
I
people
understand.
who watch us at, I think it's 7 o'clock on Sunday morning will get very upset. Why don't you introduce yourself again?
Hi, my name's Mary Saban, and I am the abutter on the side of the property that is in question.
So you're the most affected neighbor?
Yes,
And what-
I'm
what's
not
your-
on that list of abutters.
Do you know why not?
No, I don't know why not.
Okay, well, I don't know why not either, but
So you're at 84?
I'm at 84, yes.
84, okay,
But
great.
just in full disclosure, I have the house under agreement with my son and his bride-to-be, John Saban and Devin Ross.
Well, that's great.
So
So
They-
he's
they are
speaking-
concerned.
He's speaking on,
I'm speaking on my behalf because I
As the
own it right
president.
now, but
okay,
it's under agreement, so I just have a question.
then fine, why don't you tell us your question?
I'm trying to understand how many extra feet on that 8-foot line there will be from,
So like
From the
back of
existing-
existing garage, how far
Yes.
back we're going. I apologize, I don't have the plans right in front of me.
Can you tell by looking at the,
I mean,
So we
at
have
least
here-
approximately.
Sure,
If you don't
that's
mind
all
me
we're
taking a look at
no,
your
no, here,
drawings.
stay there. see if you can decipher it
Yeah,
from those
sure.
plans. Would you just go back there and go to the microphone,
Oh, yeah.
so you'll be picked up, and,
It's 8 feet, shows 8 feet, 8.2 feet.
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to see.
So additional along that line.
Yeah.
I
looks pretty
think it might be a little bit beyond that, so,
It's 10,
oh, from that, yeah, no, you're right.
Yeah.
It's,
plus 2 more in the notch.
yeah, that's correct.
Total of 10, Mary.
Okay,
That's right.
House will be 10 feet deeper.
okay.
So where we have that like connected
Right.
shed kind of thing, that's gonna go away and become part of like a bathroom and laundry room, but it's going, back.
It'll
about
never be
10
closer than 8
beyond that.
feet to your property line.
So currently, on your property, there's a really large tree right there. Is that going to be coming down?
Well, possibly, but not as a result of this construction. We had an arborist come out and he said that all those hemlocks, they have a disease called woolly adelgid and they're gonna die over time, which is unfortunate because they're really nice, all the way around. So he said we'll have to address that at some point. It won't be affected by this, and anything that we do have to remove, unfortunately, be sad to see them go, but we'll probably be replacing, well, the fence along there needs to be replaced, we'll be doing that as well.
Is that
'cause
your
I think-
fence?
I'm pretty sure it's ours. I again, will confirm, I mentioned that to JJ the other day, that we'll confirm on that and be looking to replace that, because it's in rough shape, but we'll also do some new trees along the property to, give it a little bit more privacy, as it's small neighborhood, so.
Yeah, because I think we might be wanting a fence there, so I don't know. We'll have to discuss that separately,
Yeah,
I
we'd be
guess.
happy to work with you guys to make sure that
Um,
it works for
Keep the
everyone.
dog in the yard.
Yeah.
you mean your dog? Oh,
Yeah,
his
but
dog.
his, yes. My son's dog.
Your son's dog, okay. When you said his, I thought you meant Mr.
No,
Gallop.
we
or
don't
some
have
type
one.
of-
3 kids is enough for me.
What do they have? Is it a Great Dane or some type of,
Yeah, a lab.
a lab?
That's a big dog.
So I'm actually, this is my third home in Milton. And as far as the so I'm aware of like what goes on here. But as far as this construction goes, during the construction period, will it be happening, the trucks be coming in along that fence? I just don't understand.
think they can. I don't think there's enough space for them to get back there, so.
Okay.
I obviously don't know, to be totally honest with you, what the contractors would plan to do, but if you are opposed to that, we can absolutely make sure that they don't do that. I mean, they're gonna have to pour some foundation, but otherwise, I wouldn't imagine they're gonna need much back there.
Yeah, I'd like to really find out who owns that fence. Who owns a fence if neither person installed it, and if it's on the line? How do you resolve that?
Well, number one, you never try to put a fence on the line. That's
Okay, so find out where.
It's probably a 50-year-old fence.
what you'd need to do. You have a plot plan here. I'm not sure whether the plot plan shows the fence because Mr. Gallup has my.
Doesn't show.
Yeah,
It doesn't.
it doesn't.
Okay, so what you'd have to do is have a surveying firm come out and do some, thank you, and do some, Jeff would know exactly what the expression is, but some sight lines with lasers, they do lasers today, and they'll be able to tell you precisely where the fence is, and,
Yeah, the only reason I'm concerned is because the fence that comes across to meet it is into my yard, so it looks like it would be a detriment if it came down during the construction for me, because my fence, it looks like it's my fence because it comes across my yard this way.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of who owns it, if it is ours, we can coordinate with you guys
Okay.
on if you wanna replace yours at a time when we are,
That sounds good.
we're happy to do whatever
Okay.
works for you guys, that's fine.
Great.
The prior owner, we moved in 2015, she was the original owner, and I think she had said that she thought that it was ours. But, and I guess typically you have the back of the fence facing your own property, so, but it is strange because it connects to the part that goes over to your garage, so. But either way, we're happy to work with you guys on
How old is the fence?
timing. How old is the fence? I have no idea, but it's like in the back, it's like rotting and falling down,
okay, so it needs to go.
Yeah.
So there's no little sign on the fence that gives you the
No,
fence
no.
company and when it was put in?
No, yeah, it's predates those signs, I think.
Okay, okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, I have seen the plans. As a matter of fact, we're working with the same architect to make modifications to
That's great,
this
he's
property.
terrific, he's a
Yeah.
good guy.
So, I mean, it is a beautiful addition. I just wanted to make sure that I understood what was going to happen right on the line and how much, because of the, I'm wondering how much shade, extra shade I'm going to have in the yard now with the addition further along my property line. I don't know how I can ever find that out until it's completed, but,
Well, actually, you can. It's a little bit tricky. I admit to failure trying to figure that out in a court case, but the scientists, knowing the phases of the sun at various times of the season, and you tell them what's going to be built, they could project where the shade's going to be and where the sun is going to be. Now, whether that's worth spending
No,
the
because
kind of money.
I think being north of you guys on the street, we wouldn't cast a shadow, because we get shade from that tree
Right.
across our backyard, so
Okay.
I don't think it would affect you guys,
Good.
but I'm not one of those scientists, so
That's just, well, you wouldn't want to know these people, they're very technical, and,
Yeah.
but you could do it, it's just, it's an expensive proposition.
right, no, okay.
Okay?
That's it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, appreciate. Well, anybody else have any questions of the applicant or wish to be heard? No. Let me ask, is there anyone present this evening who wishes to speak in opposition to this application? Thundering silence. Okay. So unless you have something to add, or my colleagues have any additional follow-up questions? No. Okay, so we'll end the evidence portion of this hearing and discuss it in open session, just like we did the first one. Mrs. King, do you want to be here first?
Well, I'm going to kind of sound like I did before in a way. It's not too much further against the property line on number 84. And so it really is de minimis. In all other ways, it's conforming, and it looks like it's going to be a great idea, and I would be in favor of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mullen,
I
please.
agree. The only thing I'd say is, I think there should be a note in the decision that the front elevation is not going to be modified. Oh, and the reason I think that's important is that really goes to the finding. Other than that, I think it's fine, and it feels to me like it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood than what currently exists. So I'd support the finding and the special permit.
Right, and that's the relief we're granting here. There's
Right.
been some comments about variance and.
Yeah, we're not going to use that word very often anymore.
Well, you may be,
Yeah.
well, in a town like Milton, as old and small as
Yeah.
many of these places are, you're probably very, very right. I agree with my colleagues, and I think you've done a very, very nice job making your presentation. I think Mr. Gianduso has done a great job, and I appreciate Ms. Saban coming here, because I think you're going to find these two projects will play off, not against each other, but in coordination with each other, and I think it'll work out very well. And whether you, I just have to leave to your own good judgment, or maybe some sound lawyer's advice, whether you should have the lot line surveyed
Sure.
to see who owns the fence
Yeah,
or not, or, that's really not our doing, but you just want to be very careful. You don't-
Absolutely, yeah.
Because fences, and I know you're going to talk with Mr. Saban or her son, and potential daughter-in-law, I don't mean, as to what, we hope so too, as to the fence and the coloring.
Sure, yeah, of course.
And then the tree, whether the tree has to come down. If it's going to come down, you just talk it over with them, and
Yeah, absolutely.
it'll be a win for everybody. So, all those in favor of granting the special permit and finding that that's applied for here?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You've gotten your relief. Were you present when I discussed?
Yes, yeah.
So I don't have to go through that again.
Yeah.
If you have any questions, you can deal with, directly with Mr. Prondak, and it sounds like an interesting, maybe 4 or 5 months in the neighborhood,
Yeah,
on both
yeah,
sides, for
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, I think it's going to be terrific for all. So congratulations, and thanks
Thanks.
for coming.
thank you.
Ginny, do you want to do this?
Yeah.
JJ, how are you, buddy?
You're talking to Matt,
I was just saying goodbye to John Saban.
oh, you know him?
Yes, I do. I think it's a good thing.
Since we're all being tape
I mean,
recorded here, I'd suggest you
Local kid.
don't answer that question.
Say hi?
Whether it's good or bad. Could I have the last here? Thank you.
The what? Yeah. Yeah, I have it. Yeah, thank you. Now, there's another letter here. Letter from Marion somewhere here? Oh, so,
Ned had it, and I gave him
okay.
Ned, did you say Ned?
Ned Cock. It was originally sent to me, but then Marion took the case.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
All right.
You want a few minutes, Jeff?
Nope.
Okay. We're going to call to order our third and final hearing of the evening. This is the application of Elizabeth and Christopher, is it Steckel?
Stokel.
Stokel. Dated April 1st, 2019, regarding premises at 34 Forest Street. Why don't you guys come on up and make yourselves
Sit on opposite sides here.
comfortable. You have Mr. and Mrs. Stokel?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Welcome to the Board of Appeals. Let me cover some preliminaries. I'll go fast because Mrs. McGetrick knows the preliminaries better than I do. This application is a little more complex than the other two we've had this morning, this afternoon, this evening. I guess we're in evening. But let me just briefly suggest in a rough sense what you're seeking, and Mrs. McGetrick will go into this in much greater detail. The applicant's seeking a permit to bring fill onto their property for the purposes of constructing a new home and raising the foundation of the home to an elevation that would be above the water table at this particular address. They propose to build a barn that's separate and attached from the single-family residence. And that barn is going to have a separate apartment to be used their primary residence while the house is being built. So sometimes people build the house first and then do the barn, but this is somewhat unusual, and it's a reverse situation. They need a special permit to bring the fill on. They need relief for an accessory use in the barn, using it as their primary residence while the construction activity is going to take place. The residential structure, it's going to be one residential structure on the lot. They're seeking a finding that the temporary use of the carriage house as their residence should be allowed, or alternatively for a variance to allow the use of the carriage house as a residence until an occupancy permit issues for the residence. This is a property that's in a Residence A zoning district, and we'll rely on Mrs. McGettrick to get into this in much greater detail. As evidence in this hearing, we have the application. It's dated April 1st, 2019. We have a denial letter by Mr. Prondak dated March 25th, 2019. We've received a comprehensive letter from Marion McGettrick, who's here, an attorney at 10 Crown Street in Milton, Massachusetts, discussing the application and the various somewhat unusual features of the application and requesting that the relief be granted. She notes, as I guess our first applicant, even though it wasn't adopted, the applicants are adopting a child that's due in October of 2019, and they'd like to be living in the accessory apartment while all of this is taking place, so congratulations for that. We have some very detailed plans by Merrill Engineers, which are part of the application. Multiple sheets, it just goes on and on. The house looks wonderful. My only concern is they're difficult to read when they're this small, but if we had full-scale plans, they'd be difficult to carry around, so there's no easy answer to any of that. And we did receive a letter from, Mr. Prondak has a letter from Merrill Engineers and Surveyors regarding the fill and the permit. We have a plot plan of the property. I guess it's signed by Debbie Patterson, the recorder of the land court. But it shows the lot, and we have a quitclaim deed for the property, which is helpful, and we thank you for that. Apparently, the property was acquired on January 23rd, 2019. Does that sound right? Okay, that's fine. And we have a maps online blacked out portion showing the subject property. The other twist in this application is we did receive a letter from Matthew J. Dunn, an attorney for Mr. Joe Henning and Mr. Rowe, who live at 23 Parkwood Drive. Mr. Dunn has been before the board on many occasions, and as is Mr. Joe Henning and Mr. Rowe. And I'm not going to read the letter, and we can get into this, maybe Mrs. McGettrick, but it deals with trying to protect, to some degree, the Joe Henning and Rowe property at 23 Parkwood Drive from surface water runoff issues, and the parties have engaged engineers and land use surveyors. Apparently, the engineers have devised a plan that everyone apparently is in agreement with, and so the issue is how that plan gets integrated as part of this particular application. And I know that Mrs. McGettrick will address this, and I see Mr. Joe Henning is here, and I'm sure he will follow up on behalf of himself. So with all of that, Welcome back to the Board of Appeals, Mrs. McKetrick.
Thank
It's
you
good
very
to see
much.
you again.
I'm Mary McKetrick. I'm here representing the applicants. I want to start out just to tell you that there actually are some changes to this application, and hopefully those changes will make it just a little bit simpler for you. The applicants have decided they are not going to construct a barn.
Oh.
They are not going to create the temporary, they do not want, well, they would like to, but they're not going to do that part of their plan. So that part of the application, requesting a determination as to whether they could temporarily occupy a caretaker apartment that would be created in the barn and used in the future for a caretaker, that is, I would like to withdraw.
Okay, well, I thought that was the fun part of the
It
application.
is the
I
fun
thought that
part,
would
and
be-
I was looking forward to your
Living in
discussion, yes. But it is not going to be part of this building plan, and so there's no need for the board to consider that question, although if they have comments, we'd be happy to hear them.
Okay. Thank
So the meat of this application now is the special permit. It's an application for a special permit for the importation of an additional 660 cubic yards of fill. Our bylaw allows you to import up to 1,000 cubic yards of fill if you're building a new house on a lot. But the applicants need to import 1,660 cubic yards of fill. The reason they have to, the letter from Merrill Engineering, which was sent to the building commissioner, explains that this area has a high water table. And for that reason, it's necessary to elevate the foundation of the house and to elevate the septic system area. And that will require bringing in additional fill, in part to fill in around the edges, those elevated areas. Otherwise, the lot wouldn't look right and so forth. But because you have to bring in the extra fill, and because you have a high water table, this then becomes an application, even though it's just for a special permit for bringing in fill, where you have to consider the effect on neighboring properties of any changes in drainage. Any applicant, anyone who builds a new house on a new lot is required not to increase stormwater flow off the lot as a result of their construction. And if you're building a development with many lots, the town requires that you submit a stormwater management plan with stormwater calculations. It's reviewed in a peer review process by the town, by a different engineer for the town's engineering department. They're not required to do that because it's a single lot, but they're doing it anyway because of the high water level table issues and because they are making changes in the grade of the lot. So they have a full stormwater analysis, and this is, there's a copy here for the board. You're not going to read it tonight, you're not engineers, but this is the final one for now, dated May 31st, 2019. There have been several changes in this study and in the plans since we filed this application.
And has Mr. Johanning received a copy of this?
Yes, I'll explain what's been going. So,
Okay, thank you.
the neighbors, Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe, kindly notified the applicants in April that they would very much like their own engineer to review the drainage plan and to provide comments, and if any changes were requested, to make those make those requests. And so the applicants agreed to do that, to pay for the engineering services for, I guess you would call it a peer review. Their engineer, Mr. Giuliano, has completed his review, and he has provided a letter which is, should have come to the board today along with Mr. Dunn's letter. Attached to that letter, there's Exhibit A, and that's a letter from the engineer. And so there, the engineer basically says with the changes, which the applicants made at least 2 changes that were recommended by that engineer, so the plan was modified, that with the existing plans, and that, by the way, includes the barn, because that was part of the existing plan, the engineer appears to be satisfied that there will not be an increase in stormwater flow off the lot. There is an additional request. I know I'm going to make it, the neighbors, I think Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe are going to make it, that, and I think it would be part of the procedure here anyway, that because it's an engineering plan for drainage, there has to be an as-built plan submitted before you can get your final occupancy permit for this site. You would have to do that anyway because they're building a septic system. and you have to submit an engineering plan for the septic system, and the Board of Health in that case requires that. However, that would be something that the board, if it finally decides to approve this extra importation of fill, should be putting in in their decision as a condition, so that it's very clear that there has to be an as-built plan submitted. I do think the building commissioner would require it anyway, because these plans will be part of the submission. So, excuse me. To go back to, I have an updated letter which I've provided for the board, and I'm just going to go through it tonight. So tonight, I've brought you, the land court plan for this lot has now been recorded. So the one I gave you in my application, that was the previous plan that shows the larger lot, doesn't show the exact lots that comprise this one. This is land court plan 27278X, and you have multiple copies of that. So you can see that this lot
Thank you.
has frontage on Forest Street, and it's a combination of 76 and 78 on this plan. I've also,
Subject to 76 and 78.
yes. I've given you the updated stormwater analysis that's to go into the file, and I'll explain some other changes that there may be further update to that. I've given you an updated site plan with the stormwater analysis. Don't get too confused, I just want you to know I'm giving you copies of all these things. It's a detailed plan, just like the one you have in your file, but we made several changes in that original plan, so I have to give you an updated one dated May 31st, and you have that. I've provided correspondence to the applicants from Attorney Matthew Dunn requesting the engineering review, the email responses, and then you have the letter from Attorney Dunn. So I think there's been a good process of collaboration between the two engineers, and I think that a satisfactory agreement has been reached that this is a good plan. There may be other neighbors with other comments. I'm just explaining what the process has been with these two neighbors. So the second thing I want to tell you tonight is that not only is there's the big change to this plan is they're taking the barn out. That makes less impervious area. It's good for drainage because it means there's less area that's going to be covered, there's more area to absorb water, but it also means probably that the site plan will need further adjustment, and it doesn't probably mean it, it does mean it. You have to take the barn off, and if you need to make any changes in the drainage provisions in the plan, the engineer will have to address that. So, and secondly, the applicants may possibly change the orientation of their house slightly. They're still looking at their house plans and perfecting them. So I hope we can have a full hearing and discussion tonight, but I expect that we're going to need to continue this hearing so that the applicants can submit their final stormwater, the drainage plan, site plan, and their final set of building plans. And I don't think there's any way you can make a decision tonight subject to those plans when you don't have them in front of you. If you feel differently, you can certainly tell us, but we certainly, the reason is, the building inspector is going to follow whatever plans are. If you approve this application, he's going to follow the plans that you have on file. And you have to have the final plans. You can't, if the footprint is going to be moved, there's not going to be any increase, we don't believe, in the coverage, lot coverage by the house. But if the orientation of the house is moved, then, that requires an updated plan. So that's the quick summary of what the status of this application is. I just want to say this is really about the requirement that additional fill be brought to the lot, the fact that it has a high water table, and the effect that has on drainage in the neighborhood, which is a very important issue in this neighborhood. So we've been quite careful to prepare a full drainage analysis, and we've also revised it several times. Is there an engineer here?
Yes.
And the applicant's engineer is here and can provide a little more explanation, and also is here to answer questions, because there may be questions from neighbors about that.
Okay, let me
So,
take a pause here
Yeah.
and talk to my colleagues. as to whether it's advisable under these circumstances. It's always wonderful to listen to people regarding their applications, but if there are going to be significant changes in the plans, and maybe in the character or the integrity of the drainage plan, is it sensible to sit here for an hour and a half and go over all of this, only to come back and basically go over it again? Or is it more prudent to understand that because of various reasons, material changes are going to be made, and it may be better if you just made the material changes. Then we have the application before us that we're going to vote on. And what comes to mind to me, I do have some experience, though nobody should rely on it, with drainage and water issues. And I know how perverse and insidious they can be, even with the best of engineers, and because the circumstances are always changing. And if there are any substantial changes, Mr. Johanning may want those changes reviewed by his engineers, and his engineers may want to talk with your engineers, and so the end result is it prudent to just pick another date for this and give everyone time to get the plans in reasonably final form, so that we can have a hearing on what is actually being proposed? And if the engineers somehow have questions or differ, they can sit around the table and arm wrestle or do whatever they think they need to do to be on board, so they come back to us with a plan that makes sense for everyone. Do you want to be heard on that issue, Mr. Mullen? What do you think is...
You want my view of it, is what you're really saying.
Well, I think sure, I would like if you wanted to.
I think that's right. I think that's prudent. I have a couple of questions, though, that I'd like to get out on the table, if it's all right.
Well, as long as they're directed to the applicant and not to me.
Where's Cashman live?
Can you,
Cashman.
55 Parkway.
Looking at the property, is it to the right?
Directly behind,
Yeah.
opposite Forest Street, parallel to Forest Street.
Directly behind is 39 Parkwood, and then next to me is 55 Parkwood.
You're at 55?
I'm at 39, directly behind them, and then 55, if you're looking at my house, it's directly to the left.
Who owns lot 79 on the X plan?
Is that the remainder?
Yes, it's
Cashman?
Back lot.
at the top.
Mr. Cashman?
Who owns lot 72 on the W plan and 72 on the X plan?
It's right adjacent, Marion. It's over here.
Oh, that's, I can't remember the name of the, yeah, 44 Forest, yeah.
Who owns that?
Um,
Are they a beneficiary of the restriction that Cashman has imposed on the title? Do you know?
Don't, well, you
What
have
if
a
it comes out of
copy
a
of it. I
common
mean,
chain?
it doesn't
No, I
say
just have the
anything about
deed. We just have the deed.
Diane, Jack, 44 used to own that lot.
Yeah.
It was.
44 used to own Cashman's lot.
Right,
It was, 44 used to own the two lots, it was divided years ago. It was sold off a year and a half ago. The person behind him, I believe his name was Mr. Cashman,
right.
who moved the barn, okay?
Yeah.
But, go ahead, I could give you some good input to that lot, okay?
We don't need to get into the detail. I think the title material, I mean, I'm just interested, not as interested in it now that the bond's not going in, because it was central to the bond conversation. I just wanted to understand that. I also think the elevations, to the extent that we're gonna talk about the fill, I think we're gonna have to see some better elevations of what this house looks like from Forest Street. I know there's copies in here, but you really can't
So you want conceptual
tell.
plans that show you what it will look like?
I would bring the full size of the elevation that's in the plan set.
Yep.
It looks like there's a huge foundation, and I think that's probably not right. It just
that's
looks
not
that
the
way.
intent, yeah.
Yeah. But it looks, the photocopy's bad enough that it looks like this house is sitting up on a big foundation. You see?
Oh, no,
That's visible, yeah, that's all.
That's actually a.
So you want to
courtyard.
bring the right
That's a
plan.
Courtyard, that's not elevation.
You can't tell. So you want to bring the right
Yeah, you
plan,
can
because
color
this hearing is going to be about what that fill is going to do to the lot. So we want to understand that a little bit. That would have been my question. I asked it anyway.
Okay,
I appreciate
And it was-
you letting me do it.
I always
Thank you.
defer to you, your
Chairman.
judgment.
And that is part of the intent of bringing in the fill, is to make sure that that doesn't have a huge foundation exposed.
Okay.
Jenny, do you have any preliminary questions, or do you prefer to?
No, I think this would be a prudent thing to do as far as giving the applicants and neighbors time to exchange opinions on the drainage and so forth. So I would say let's get another date.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Phil and John were kind enough to take a little bit of the lead on this.
Sorry, if you're going to ask,
Yeah, so my
I
name's
guess
Sean
you-
Fitzgibbon.
tell us who you are.
Yeah, my name's Sean Fitzgibbon. I'm at 22 Parkwood. Welcome to the neighborhood. You know, I'm not for or against anything here.
Did
But
you say Sean Fitzgerald?
Sean Fitzgibbon.
It's Gibbon, thank you, sir.
Yep. Yeah, and we had, we moved here about 2 years ago. We had a big, the plot next door to us got torn down, a new house put up there. A bunch of city trees were torn down and replaced with much smaller trees. So I think we're taking a little bit more interest in these types of meetings. And again, I think everyone's concern here is water. And I guess one of my questions is, to what extent, again, Phil and John kind of went out and kind of had their independent engineer, do some analysis. I don't know how much that's protecting my property versus just their property. Did that engineer just look at what's the water flow around their property versus the whole neighborhood? To what extent does the board take responsibility for understanding the flow to the whole neighborhood?
That's a tough question, sir, because generally we're dealing with an application and people who are specifically involved in that application. It could be surrounding neighbors. The question is drawing the line. Engineers who do this type of work, they're specialized and they're expensive. So if you ask them to do a study of the neighborhood, depending upon where you draw the circumference of what is the neighborhood, it could cost a lot of money. So I think the simple answer is we normally deal with people who are reasonably affected, but drawing that line is very difficult.
So do we all need to hire our own engineer and ask them to pay for an
Well,
engineer
as-
to protect my property?
Well, you can ask them to pay, but I'm not so sure that, depending on whether you're in a butter or you're 100 yards away or 150 yards away, you certainly probably can participate. We won't get involved in a lot of standing issues. We don't fight those out. But it can be an expensive proposition. Many times, if, for example, in this instance, I don't have a graphic in my head as to where this house is and where your property is and all of that. But more often than not, at least the engineers for the applicants here probably would be willing to speak with you and talk with you and see whether there's, in their view, there's, and they're not your engineers, but they may tell you, well, you're so far away, it doesn't affect you, or they may say, well, it's an interesting issue. And you can talk with the building inspector's office, but I don't, with all due respect to Mr. Prondak, I'm not sure he is an expert at water flows and.
Well, I know,
Go ahead, Jeff.
the way you asked the question, I think you answered it correctly. You asked if the board, to what extent does the board take responsibility?
We don't.
But I do think the testimony was that the law is that you can't you can't design something that results in additional water discharge to neighboring properties. That was the testimony of the applicant. What the work that Eaglebrook has done has confirmed that if the design works as intended, It won't cause runoff to downstream properties. That was the scope of their work, and that's what their letter says.
Yep.
I don't know if you're downstream or upstream,
We're downstream.
and we don't have to get into that. I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get into that.
Yep.
And all they've asked for is that the town confirm that the as-built plan is consistent with the design and that the design functions as intended. So while the Board of Appeals doesn't have a specific enforcement right over this issue, it is an accurate statement of the law that you can't cause runoff onto a neighboring property.
And are those documents available online?
This will be in the board's file, so I don't know if it's online, but it'll be available to you for public inspection.
And for copying,
Yeah.
if you need to, I think. So all I'm saying, this is a very murky issue, and if you talk with Mr. Joe Henning and his engineer, they may be of some help. Yeah, the applicant's engineer, maybe they'll talk to you, but they're not going to warrant.
And that's not what I'm looking for.
Yeah, because I'll tell you, I did represent an engineering firm that did waterproofing of 40-story office buildings in Boston. They were the best in the business. Sometimes those properties leaked, even after having the best in the business, because of the wind and the rain and the weather conditions and the cold and the heat. And there's no certainty when you're dealing with water runoff. But the other way of doing this, and I don't give legal or professional advice here, it's not my job, but maybe for a small fee, for example, Mr. Joe Henning's firm would help you out, or at least give you an indication of whether there's a likelihood of an issue. You may be able to get 4 or 5 neighbors that are proximate to you and pitch in 20% each and talk to an independent engineer. You've got a lot of the homework here. The trouble is you've got to analyze all of this stuff.
Right.
They can do it quicker than we can and more efficiently, but there are a lot of alternatives that you have to
I just
consider.
hope that homework shows that we are trying to take this very seriously, and I think engaging a very professional firm as we did is addressing the water runoff and we're actually improving the site versus the current conditions. And I think that hopefully will get you guys comfortable that downstream from us, if we're holding more water on our property, then that should not make you any worse off.
Is that helpful to you?
Yes,
I mean,
very helpful.
That shows
But
serious
again, it's
attempt.
kind of, just want to understand how the process works.
Yeah, and as I say, engineers give their opinion as to the reasonable probability of success and on all kinds of projects, but it's always reasonable and it's always probable. They're not acting as insurance companies for anybody because of the vagaries of
It's,
Mother Nature.
trying to predict water is not easy.
It isn't easy. And then I know Mr. Joe Henning's been here before, and he certainly has water problems on his property. I've seen it. So,
Okay.
thank you. Let me, the gentleman wanted to be heard. Do you want, you're gonna have to come up.
I'd like to give maybe some constructive input to this.
Sure, come on up here, please. Tell us your name and address and we'll.
My name is Richard Bonomi. I live at 60 Forest Street. Okay. I live at the end of your field to the right, okay? First off, welcome to the neighborhood. Like I say, you got a substantial investment, and trust me, even down the road from now, with all your engineers, I'd hate to see it go sour on you. And I'm gonna give you some real good constructive input to this. I built my house 34 years ago there. So I kinda know everything that go around. I've been in this town for whole life, over 70 years. This is not the first time Phil will be brought into that property. It never perked properly, never, okay? That's why it was never done anything with. That's why the bond was never converted to a house from the previous owner who wanted to do it, okay? I have a private well that I use solely for my own property, my own drinking and everything. My concern would be on changing the water structure or the water table. It's detrimental. And as far as the septic system goes, all the engineers in the world can do anything they want. And in the 34 years that I've been there, number 71 put in a new leaching field about 10, 12 years ago. The DEQE is up there putting in another one today. They have a permit from the DEQ. They're putting in another one. That's what the old barn is. I live at 60, I own the brick house down there. Everybody in that complex has water, has had water, and pumps water continually, okay? Unless it's a completely dry season. I don't have it because of the way I structured it. I have a different kind of septic system. I have pits, okay? You can't do it where you are, it's too wet. The person next door to me has put one in, he's got a raised field. The person next to him had put a whole new one in. The person next to him, water runs freely. Number 44, who used to own the lot, I put the pipe in to pump it out of there so they wouldn't have water continually, okay? It's a continuous problem there. Let alone the fact of that, the house that's across the street, well, that's just 27, but the one just south of that, okay, the newest house on the street, was built about 8 or 9 years ago, okay? They replaced the drainage field, the septic system, last year. It didn't even last 8 years. The people who owned the big red barn down the end, about 12 years ago, had a whole, do a new system. I know the guy that did it. He told me he's a dick. He said, "Fine." He says, "I had to stop at $34,000. He said, "I felt bad with the price." There is an issue up there. There's a strong issue with the water table, okay, and leaching. So my advice to you is, when you do get these engineers, get somebody else to take a real serious look at it. There isn't a house in that area. I remember when Tom Crosby and his father were building it back in the 60s, okay, in Parkwood. Everybody down there has got water. Everybody's got water. If they didn't, and water changes, sometimes they'll have it, then it might disappear. Nobody knows where that aqua system, how that flows down below. And if you start a stormwater runoff, where's it going? God forbid, Oldfield, well, he's been before this board another 150,000 times, everybody knows that, okay? But again, I have to stick up for him. He's right next door. He just had to put a big trench because all that water, okay, was running down on a hillside street, running down on a hollow street, running into the brook. The town doesn't need that. They don't need to deal with a polluted brook because of septic runoff, okay? There's no drains on that street, okay? And when I built my house, I'm not far from the barn. That's my stone wall that we built. It wouldn't perk then. That's why the house was never put near the field. It was moved, okay? Just some inside advice. But I can't stress the fact that that is not the first time there's fill been brought into that property. So it's not the 1,000 yards that you're talking about now, okay? And you're talking an extra 1,660, which is approximately 85 18-wheelers coming in there. And who knows? It could end up being more. It's a very long, you know, and you got a substantial investment. Believe me, I wish you the best of luck in building a house. I'd be a hypocrite if I told you not to, okay? There's problems there. And there used to be a pipe there pumping water. There was a pipe all the way down there. I don't know if it's still there. That was from years and years ago, okay, before anybody even lived up there. So my tell you is, if you get these engineers, tread cautiously and have the town take a real look at it. Because I'm gonna tell you, it's not the first time filled, so it's beyond 1,000, it's beyond that 1,000 yards now that have already gone in there. All right, and everybody's got a septic problem, everybody. It's a matter of time before they replace their septic system up there. It's just a given. It's just Milton's got a high water table to begin with. But from there, unfortunately, it flows all downhill into the brook, okay? That's, okay. And the private wells, you have to take in consideration for the private wells when the runoff, no one knows where that's gonna go. I know if it's 150 feet from your septic system, yeah, you can drill the well. It used to be 100, I think it's 150 now, it's changed. But again, that doesn't mean it's not gonna flow and change direction.
Thank
I wish
you.
you the best of luck on that.
Well, we appreciate you coming. Thank you very much. Mrs. McEttrick, do you want to come back here and, I'm sorry?
I'm another neighbor.
Yeah, but we're not going to conduct the hearing, so, you know, it's,
We would like to address
Still just water on the other side of Hillside Street downhill from.
yeah, but we're gonna hear all the neighbors, and you're just gonna, it's gonna be unduly repetitive. We'll get to that issue. Mary, let me ask you this. In terms of Mr. Dunn's letter
Yes,
and the two engineering firms here,
yes.
even though for the limited purposes here, they have proposed a drainage plan, if I can just call it that. And they're in agreement as to what should be done
Yes.
in order to minimize issues for the subject property and for Mr. Joe Henning's property and all of that. Is there a separate, I'm not asking you what it says, but is there a separate legal document between the applicants here and Mr. Joe Henning and Mr. Rowe regarding the construction of the system that's been proposed by the engineers and what the consequences are between the parties, not dealing with the Board of Appeals, if the system doesn't function as both engineers expect it to?
There isn't a separate legal document. There is a letter from the engineer who has done a peer review of the drainage, the stormwater drainage plan. This is the analysis.
Right.
The plan is a result of the analysis. And his letter says that he believes, it is his belief as an engineer, having reviewed all of this and having requested certain changes, that there will be no increase in runoff from these changes. Now, it's important, I mean, we're going to be able to go into this in more detail, presumably at a future hearing. So what I would say is that that the engineer should explain the report to you, because the report does many calculations of runoff and shows you what the runoff is now and what it's expected to be after the changes to the site.
Right.
And it should show, and it does show, improvement, not just no net increase in runoff.
Oh, I understand that.
And that happens to be, because of the sensitivity of this site, well, the kind of result that I would certainly be looking for, but I'm not an engineer. You know, looking for,
Neither are we.
knowing how these things.
You're going to be
exactly.
preaching to the
So the
the
engineer
innocents,
needs
yeah.
to provide that testimony to the board. And I also hope, I would like to get the name of everybody who's here tonight from the neighborhood, because since we're not having a full discussion at the meeting, I think we need an opportunity to have that discussion outside the meeting and then come back.
Let me ask you this, have these engineering reports, including the updated Merrill report and revised as of May 31, 2019, have they been reviewed and commented on by Mr. Prondak?
No, but normally he wouldn't do that. I think if you wanted a town response, you'd want the town engineering department to review them.
Well, has the town
Would
engineering...
you like me to ask for that? It's
Well,
not
no, it
something
just-
that they
no, it-
normally have to do for a single lot, but I
Well,
certainly
that's
can
the
give it to them.
issue. That's the issue that Mr., I
I
think it
think
was
that's
Mr.
been
Bonomi.
suggested by several
Is this a
people.
single lot issue, or is it a condition that has to be considered with wider implications? And in several instances where we've had technical issues before, we don't rely on Mr. Prondak to do this type of analysis, but we've sent these out for peer reviews of some kind, an independent review, and asked the parties or the applicant to sponsor that endeavor. What concerns me is that that could be a very expensive option. I don't know what it would cost. Maybe that's something we can be doing in the recess period here, because in all candor, we hear a lot of technical evidence here, but when it comes to highly specialized evidence, I've seen many instances at the board here, and in my cases in court, where you'll have one engineer espousing point A, and the other side will bring in an engineer who espouses point X, and they're both forceful advocates for their position, and how does anyone know wherein the difference lies? We've got a responsibility to everyone here, and making that type of determination, I personally would feel very uncomfortable doing that, trying to read these reports, listen to what the engineers say, And unless they both agree on everything, trying to make factual and conclusory determinations based on that type of testimony. And so my concern here is, unless these engineers, let's say in a month or whatever we continue this for, are coming back saying, yeah, we're both in agreement, this is the way to do it, and this is, it's not going to have any substantial effect on the neighborhood, it's going to improve conditions in the neighborhood, as you say, then we've got a tough fact-finding issue there.
Well,
See? And that's why I thought, to be frank about it, that the parties who are most affected, the applicant, Mr. Johanning and Mr. Rowe, would have some type of an agreement as to not only what's going to be done, but what's not going, what has to be, if there are conditions that are unsuspected or that are unusual, how that's going to be handled. I mean, the Board of Appeals, what are we going to do if everyone agrees here? And so we allow all the permits, we allow the thing to get built, and both engineers are wrong. You know, their best efforts, it doesn't work, and adverse effects on the properties. What happens then? We're not going to be pulling permits or zoning relief, which we've given under the circumstances, and your clients have spent $1 million or more, I think much more, but that's none of my business, and find out that there are adverse consequences. You know, you can't say, well, your permit is no good, and you can't, yeah, that's crazy. Do you want to weigh in on this, Jeff? Because I think it's an issue of some consequence. I mean, is it the Board of Appeals' job here? Where are we if these engineers assume they agree, substantially agree, and they agree to build out this system as suggested, and we get a peer reviewer, and they follow the construction as it's going along, and they make comments, and if there are issues, Mr. Prondak can weigh in a little bit. But it's all constructed, and they say it's constructed as scheduled and as specified.
can I,
And it leaks, and there's excess drainage all over the place.
may I make one comment before you
Sure.
finish discussing it? These issues come up all the time. I mean, they come up before the Conservation Commission, for example. And the way they're handled is through a lot of engineering work, a recommendation for a plan from an engineer, and very often there's a peer review. Sometimes the town will require it, which is the same work being done again by another engineer, and then the question is, do they agree, do they disagree?
Well, it's a review of the existing, it's not necessarily an independent study. The peer review?
The peer review, it all depends on what's required in the peer review.
Right, but it would be, in my view, these are expensive engineers, and I don't know what you've spent, but I think it's a lot of money. I think it would be a terrible imposition to have the clients spend $10,000 or $15,000 to have somebody do an original.
No, that isn't what I meant. I mean, they review all the work of the first engineer, and they critique it.
Yes.
Was it you know, according to industry standards? Was it carefully done? Are there mistakes? Are the conclusions wildly inaccurate?
Right, they're logical,
Should there be
consistent.
additional measures introduced? This engineer went on site and inspected the site. I'm not trying to say that this isn't the end of the story, because they might make some changes to their plan, and so there will have to be further review. But just to use the study that we've had done by Merrill Engineering and the review that's been done by Mr. Giuliano, they've reached agreement in this case.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. I mean, you can have more engineers come in and see if they'll agree as well. Then the second question is, are all the engineers wrong? Are there other conditions that might happen later in the future? There's always a certain amount of uncertainty. There could be something that could happen in the future that nobody has anticipated. And in that case, if, you know, you're tied to the plans and the conditions. In this engineering study, the stormwater analysis, the last part of it's an operations and management plan. It has numerous requirements for what the owners would have to do to maintain the drainage system once installed, and there's a lot. They have to clean out things on a regular basis, and they have to have inspections done. And so that's a standard that establishes whether they're being diligent in maintaining their property. And if there were future runoff problems, the first thing that any neighbor would look at is whether they have proof that they've been doing their maintenance and their inspections.
Can I ask
And
you
that's why
something?
you have those in these.
Well, I understand that.
They're
That-
designed as a framework so that you can do look back and enforcement if necessary, but they don't all, I mean, it's impossible to anticipate anything that could possibly happen. Within the ability of an engineer to study a site and devise a plan, this is what we're trying to do, devise the best
Okay,
plan we can.
I appreciate that fully, and I appreciate the applicants would be doing their due diligence to comply with the various conditions that are stated. Can you answer this question? And it's the scope of the studies. Is the scope of the Eagle Brook and the Merrill studies, are they looking at the subject property and properties that are immediately down gradient of the subject property?
You're looking at runoff from the property, stormwater runoff in all directions.
Right,
It's
but
it's a measure of what the changes to the property will do to the current stormwater runoff as studied by this engineer. It's not stormwater runoff
the neighborhood,
only to
it's
the
not the
west.
right.
It's stormwater runoff on, off the perimeter of the property. And again,
Right,
I
but is
would
this-
much prefer to have the engineer explain,
Well,
how
no,
he
I
does the
understand what
study,
you're
but-
saying, but I'm just, to me, if you've got a fairly large neighborhood, and this house is in the middle of the neighborhood, and you just study the runoff, the stormwater runoff from this particular property onto other properties, and you haven't looked at the conditions and the character of properties reasonably proximate to this property, to the right or to the left, your conclusion, it could be way off the mark. In other words, this is part of the runoff from this property is dependent, I would think, on the property that's up gradient of it, and depending on the topography, it could be to the property to the left and the right. In other words, it's more of a synergistic
But that's how the
issue.
engineer studies it. I mean, the engineer studies the runoff, which is a result of the Blue Hills, which is up behind it, and then all the lots that are around it that drain onto this property. That's what they study. So that's what they're supposed to study.
Okay.
They're supposed to study the effect of the surrounding properties that would drain onto it. That's how they calculate what the existing stormwater runoff is. And then they look at the proposed changes, and there's a number of them in this property, and how that would change runoff. And then they have to devise a plan that will absorb water on the site in various ways so that there is no increase in the runoff downgrading.
Right, and that's without doing any calculations on abutting lots to the left or the right or above them. It sounds to me, it's sophistic to me.
It's all a question of grade and direction of runoff.
It seems like a wider issue. It seems like that the stormwater runoff, particularly in this area, is more of a generic issue. And I don't know how you fairly inaccurately predict the effect of runoff with respect to specific properties if the issue is more generic. And
Yeah, so
I don't know. I'm not an engineer.
well, I know, I had three thoughts. We're having a hearing you didn't want to have. That was not one of my thoughts. but
I
that's a
agree,
statement.
I agree.
Um,
But we want to know where we're
I get
going.
it. I think,
We'll
I
be-
think it's a fair question for the building inspector, given the fact that we're going to continue this hearing, and we could ask his advice on this issue. It did seem
But
to
they
me.
need peer review.
Exactly.
Yes.
Especially given, Marion's point, a good one, I think, about the fact that, it's not typically done on every lot. Maybe it should be done on this lot. I don't know. He will know.
I don't know. Well, these engineers should know.
Yeah. But coming into this hearing, I guess
Maybe
my
they
look.
didn't want to do the study because maybe it would take.
They have. She's right here.
The engineer's here, if you'd like, we really should hear from her, what we're just, going on.
We're going to have the same hearing again. And that's, you know, so,
We just want to make sure we're addressing everything.
I'd ask the board's indulgence to allow the engineer to give a brief description of how she studied the lot, so that when we go from this hearing to the next hearing, we'll have a framework for further communication with the neighbors who are many of them are here. I know you, I don't want to take a lot of time,
Can you do that in a succinct manner without a lot of technical jargon, and you can help us get our heads screwed on straight?
Sure.
Sure, tell us who you are.
My name is Deborah Keller. I'm a licensed professional engineer with Merrill Engineers and land surveyor located in Hanover, Massachusetts. So I originally did the stormwater study for the property, and I'm just looking for, so what we did was we looked at and we focused on the property down gradient from us, knowing that that was, the flow pattern comes across the property from 44 towards Hillside. Looking at the site, we analyzed the existing conditions. We have peak rates and peak volumes. We then lay over the proposed work on the property and as stated, analyze the increases to the flow and the volume of runoff. And we know where it goes down gradient so that we make sure that we're not impacting any of the abutting properties of where the flow
That's
runs
for
off.
this specific property.
For this
the
specific
flow
property.
from that specific
We're
property.
looking at how it flows across down to Hillside. With that being said, our goal is to focus on our property, so whatever the increase is on our property that we're doing with the proposed work, we need to mitigate that. So we're mitigating it through rain garden, roof dry wells, any way that we can help slow down the runoff, as well as introduce it into the ground where it ultimately went in pre-conditions. Therefore, that's what this study shows, is that the design, stormwater design that we have on our property will allow us to meet or reduce the amount of flow and volume of runoff coming off, that flows off our property down gradient.
Right, but you're taking this property as a single site. Aren't there properties to the left and to the right in various distances that also contribute to the groundwater flows? And have they been considered as part of this study?
This is a surface runoff study. We're not studying groundwater flows, so it's just surface water.
Okay.
It's what runs off.
Good, and I stand corrected, but did the surface water run off from properties in a wider area than the subject property enter into your consideration?
We evaluate that, and in this case, Forest Street cuts it off, so we don't have flow coming across Forest Street onto our property. There is flow coming from 44 that runs across the fields and down through the nursery and into the expanded stormwater system that they have. So the focus here was looking at that runoff, what impacts are on our site, and making sure that we don't increase any of the flow from this development on this down gradient stormwater system that they've worked on, which is, I believe, a concern for some of the abutters. So that's the study. We don't go and study a 100-acre watershed for here, for this. But we do look at all the surrounding properties. The field in the back flows away from this property. Forest Street gives us a cutoff. There is a portion of 44 that flows onto our site and comes around through the field and ultimately down to the low point, which is the abutting properties, the way I'm looking at my plan to the right,
Sure. No,
to Hillside.
I think that's it. Do you have any questions? Okay, Ms. Cullen, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. You've made things a little bit clearer for me. Marion, do you want to come back and we'll see what we're going to do? We'll talk with Mr. Prondak about these issues. And see whether he feels comfortable with these issues himself, or whether he thinks that maybe some type of peer review on behalf of the town is in order, that can be discreet and be reasonable, but not involve terrible expenses or terrible delays here. Especially under your circumstances, you want to get going here.
Well, whatever you think is necessary.
No,
I mean, this
I
is, this is where we are, so, you know,
I don't know how long that type of review would take. Do you have any idea, Jeffrey? I don't have the slightest idea. And, these reports are comprehensive, they're sophisticated, I don't know what to say.
I mean, we've had a sort of, you know, we've had one done, but, you know, everyone could be different, so I think it is difficult to say. We need some time, because the applicants need to make sure they have final building plans, absolutely. They need to know where the footprint of the house is, how big it is. I've already told you they're not building the barn, so they're removing some of the impervious structures, some of the structures on the lot. We need a plan that will show you that, and will show any engineer who's gonna do a peer review, and their own engineer is going to have to build that back into the plan. So I've asked the applicants, you know, how much time they think they need, and it's certainly more than a week. You know, so, and I know that your schedules, you have to coordinate your schedules in order to set a future hearing date, and I don't want it to be, I don't want to linger too long. We need to get more feedback, excuse me, I think from neighbors who are here as well, but I don't know. What do you think? What would be reasonable, a month? 2 weeks?
I think a month more, probably better than 2 weeks, especially if we're gonna get a peer review.
Yeah. I would expect you would need that time. The question is whether you can find a time that you could set for a hearing, when all three of you would be available. I suppose worst case, if we're not ready,
Well,
then tell you we had to continue, but I would like to schedule it for enough time so that we can really try to give you what we have and let you deliberate.
My problem is the unknown. We don't know if Joe wants to consider having peer review here, how long that would take, and whether they're available, and,
Well, if you want to try to set a date in about a month. We're open certainly to the possibility, obviously, if we can't meet that date because we don't have the information that we need, then, you know, somebody's going to have to come to the hearing and continue it to a future date. And I know it's inconvenient to keep trying to find these dates when you can all meet, but that's what we have to do.
That number one would be you, and we would appreciate you coming. And I think your idea of having a sign-in sheet from the neighbors, so that if we pick a date in July, for example, we're going to shoot towards, maybe it should be August, I don't know. But if it was going to be continued, you could either call in to the Board of Appeals office, or the applicants could contact you, so you wouldn't be continuing vacation plans to come to a hearing that's not going to take place. So that can be coordinated. What's your schedule like?
Maybe in July.
Jenny, how about you?
I am not around in very late July.
Okay.
Other than that,
July 23rd is a Tuesday.
I'm going to be away then, that third week. How about the first week
August
in
6th.
August sometime?
August 7th.
August 6th or 7th?
7th is a Wednesday.
I won't be here the first week in July, just so.
Okay, well, we're looking at...
It should be later than that, I think.
we're-
Your engineer will be away there's a couple of weeks in July. So if you've got building plans done in a week, you know, she could
It's not
do
gonna be
a
the-
review. But,
No. I mean, I'm pretty free in early August, first week, second week. Jenny, is that good for you?
Yep.
Marion, we're talking about the, maybe sometime in the second week of August. Does that work for people?
Oh, yeah.
This could-
That should be enough time.
Who's in the hearing, Joe? Just on the couple.
Okay, hey, ladies and gentlemen, please, stay with us.
Judy could do it.
You need a gavel.
He wouldn't let this happen.
Marion, do you have general availability during?
I do, just that first week in July, I won't be here, but other than that.
Mr. Johanning, are you available the first or second week in August, yourself or Mr. Rowe? Oh, absolutely. You are, okay, that's great. Okay, so, either one, I can do that.
6th?
Not the 8th. It's a Thursday. 7th is better.
That's fine.
Okay, hey, ladies and gentlemen, what we're going to shoot for, if it's agreeable to everybody. We're going to shoot for August 7th, Wednesday, August 7th, 7:30. It'll be the only hearing on. And I think starting at 7:30 is probably the best way to do it. Getting earlier is just... Okay, so, any objections out there, friends, to August 7th at 7:30? Okay, and I hear none, so we're going to continue this to August 7th at 7:30, and we'll be in touch with you, Marion, about it. We'll talk with Joe Prondak. And we're going to go over to August 7th, folks, at 7:30 for the continued hearing. Anybody have any serious objections to that? No. Okay, and if that hearing, for some reason, needs to be continued, just keep in touch with Mrs. Sutton, and just to be sure that we're going to go forward on that date, so you don't mix up your plans and find out nothing's happening. Okay? Thank everyone for coming, and thank you very much, Marion, and we'll
Thank you. Thank you very much.
see if we can get this moving.
Yeah, we'll get as much information as we can to help you.
Okay, we know you will. Thanks for your patience.
Does everybody have a chance to write down their name? Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So we want to try to find, we want to try to,
We're adjourned.